Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by my Sunday morning chat, as is becoming traditional. I won't make this too long today. A report on the minibus trip yesterday to the British Orchid Congress and Show at Writhlington School. A good, excuse me, a good day out basically. Hiring the minibus went great, smooth, although I was pleased I got there early and was first in the door because there were about 8 people behind me. That would have delayed the proceedings. Anyway, that went well, and the people on the bus were well impressed with the level of comfort, because I don't quite know what they were expecting, but I think they were expecting to be totally squashed up and knees up round their neck and all that sort of stuff, but it was a smashing vehicle, quite honestly. Pleasure to drive. To have my driver's hat on, obviously. And journey went well. Everything was great. We got there. The day was very chilly with quite a breeze, which makes it feel even colder. But it stayed dry, which was good because the show took place in many different buildings, so there was quite a bit of outdoor walking to get from one building to another. But the real bonus was the actual Writhlington glass houses, which is part of the school's Orchid project. I'm going to put a link to their website. There's some interesting reading there. This Orchid project involves sending the school children to places like Rwanda. That they've been to quite a lot of parts of the world as conservationists to actually encourage local people to use the plants for their benefit, to be able to introduce the idea of putting plants back into the wild, by using sort of growing techniques and flasking and all that on sort of endangered species and getting them back out into the wild. And it's an idea. It's a way of bringing some life back into areas. So their project extends a lot more than just beyond the school. We had a look around the propagation labs, loads of flasks everywhere with little seedlings in. They even had some of their high-powered microscopes trained on some orchid seeds. And these are spectacular to view, in very high magnification. They're quite unusual shapes. We had a look around there. We had some food. But the real bonus was that last time I went, although I took the video camera, I couldn't use it. Because it was the school's Orchid Project open day, it was being manned and run by the school children. And obviously I can't film young people and put the video on YouTube. So all I could do was take some stills, some cleverly positioned stills that didn't include any of the children. But the bonus this time is when we went to have a look round the Writhlington glass houses, there were no children in there. Just members of the public, so I was actually able to film. And I'll put that together. That's what I call a faffy video, because there's a lot of little clips that have got to be put together. I've got to take the soundtracks off of all those clips, find a suitable piece of music and everything. But I think when I get that together and post it, the thing that will impress people, I hope, is the sheer spectacle and scale. And I don't mean loads of wonderful blooms, it's the plants. Some of those plants are 4 foot across by 4 foot tall. It's the scale and the spectacle of their massive specimen plants. And I mean, it is rumoured that there is a plant they have there that is possibly the only one of its kind left in the world. It's been lost in cultivation. Nobody knows of anybody that's got one, and it's been extinct in the wild for a long time. But they do have one, and they're hoping to propagate that from seed and get some plants going in sufficient numbers to reintroduce that into suitable places in the wild from its original habitats. So, they do a lot of work, this place. If there was something like that going on when I was at school, I'd still be there in my short trousers. They'd never get rid of me. The number of school subjects included is just vast. You've got the science, the chemistry, all that sort of thing, the maths, in the labs and all the stuff like that. Then you've got the conservation projects, the trips abroad, engaging with local people and setting up projects in other countries, all that sort of stuff going on. And then in addition to that, they've got their retail side of life. And for youngsters to be included and actually visit shows and sell plants to the public, all that side of life. Marketing. There are so many school subjects that one project involves. Simon Pugh-Jones, who sort of thought it all up and got it going and everything, he could do with the Queen's Award, quite honestly. And I do worry about what's going to happen to that project when he finally retires. What one individual can take his place. It'll be a struggle. But the idea is that as the school children progress and leave the school, they will come back in some shape or form to help manage the thing. The whole project and everything. And there were quite a few there yesterday, quite a few, ex-members of the project that had come back to visit and see how it's doing, so their interest is still there. And for youngsters of that age to be interested in orchids is quite something. It's a very rare thing. And it all comes down to the enthusiasm of the guy running it. And his knowledge and everything. So, but yes, I managed to film, so I will put that one together at some point. It might not be till later in the week, but yeah. And one of the people on the minibus, who's actually a member of Bournemouth Orchid Society, appreciated it so much she bought me some presents. So we have some little bags on the floor, which one of those is my own purchase. My daughter wanted to get something as a belated birthday present, and I filled in a gap, which is quite nice, because my twinkles, yes, I've got Tiny Twinkle, which is fundamentally white. I've got the yellow one, and I've got the cinnamon one. Once upon a time I had a dark pink one that was called Twinkle Red. Now, it wasn't true red at all, but it was a very deep pink, and I lost that as part of my ceramics playing around a while ago now. That's long since forgotten, but I lost a lot of plants in that little experiment, shall we say. So I managed to find a good one of those and replaced it. The actual orchid displays, I started filming some, and I hate to say it, but I got bored. Looking at the Orchid Society displays, it's so samey. I don't know, maybe I'm being too cynical, but I just felt like I was filming the same plants that were at the last show and at the show before, and it was difficult to get any enthusiasm. So I filmed a couple of those displays, which I'll put in a separate video, but I didn't get very far, let's put it that way. And I spent an awful long time chatting with acquaintances, that you only meet up with at shows from other orchid societies and things like that. And more importantly, one trader there really brought home what is potentially about to happen with Brexit. And he had banners round the top of his stand basically saying goodbye to people, because that may well have been his last visit to the UK. If Brexit applies all the rules and the UK leaves the European Union, then the traders from Europe and other parts of the world won't be able to get into to the UK without spending a small fortune on the paperwork and certificates necessary. And that would all have to be added to the price of the plants, and the price of those plants would end up being so extortionate that nobody would buy them. So there would be no point in these traders coming to the UK for the shows. So things like the Malvern show will just die. They just won't happen anymore. And you could see the guy was quite upset with the whole process of this being probably his last visit to the UK. And I spoke to several of the traders, and they're all in the same boat. They're all thinking that, this is one of their sequence of events throughout the Orchid Show year that they look forward to doing. And they physically won't be able to do it. So, it could be the end of quite a few of the larger orchid shows. Because if it's only the UK traders that are going to be there, there's only a few. And that doesn't make an international show. Even people like Equigenera, who I assumed would be okay, because if they're already going from outside the EU into the UK with their plants, then they must have it all sorted. But apparently that's not true. They import all of their plants into Germany first as a central point. And then, because they're then within the EU, they can take their plants all around the EU to all the shows. So even they may get stopped. So it's quite a big deal. And the effect it's going to have is that buying orchids is going to become very difficult, because people won't pay the money to import them into this country. Even the big stuff, even the mass producers in the likes of the Netherlands and Germany that fill all our shops with the Phalaenopsis, well, they won't be able to do that, not at those prices. It's going to have a major effect if it goes badly. And us poor souls who got asked to vote whether we wanted to stay in the EU or leave, we weren't told all this. We were not given the information to make a sensible judgment. And a lot of people who thought it was a good idea for us to go it alone and set up trade agreements all over the world, which we're not allowed to do at the moment because the EU stops us doing that, thought it was brilliant. But that was such a small part of the story. We weren't given the information, and all this extra stuff has come out as the negotiations have progressed. Somebody put their hand up in a meeting and said, what's going to happen in Ireland then? Because the north of Ireland is part of the United Kingdom. And then there's a line across the map, and below that line is the Republic of Ireland, which is a country in its own right who is a member of the European Union, as at the moment we are. So there is no real border in Ireland. It's just a line on a map. There's a lot of other issues going on with that line on the map that I won't go into, the politics and all that sort of stuff. But nonetheless, it is just a token line on the map. But if we leave the European Union, that becomes a proper border between two separate countries and should then be subject to all the necessary border controls. And neither side of that silly line on the map want that to happen. But the Republic of Ireland won't have any choice, because the European Union will dictate, you are part of the Union, you will have hard borders with your neighbouring countries, of which there is only one, which is part of the United Kingdom. It gets incredibly complicated, and none of this was thought of at the time we voted to leave the European Union. And I'm sure a lot of people, if they were asked again now, will have changed their minds. And some of them will have dug their heels in and be even more adamant that we should leave. And a lot of people were just fed up of being dictated to by a union, and lots of countries all joined together that appear to gang up on some. But anyway, whatever happens, it could be the end of a lot of the orchid shows in the UK. It might mean I'll have to get off my backside and go to some of the European shows. So I've never done that before. The likes of Paris and things like that. So anyway, that's for the future, and it's still yet to be decided. Let's have a look at these new plants. I've got the lights on today. It's raining and it is incredibly dull today. Now, I got my lights to extend the day lengths, but there was always a proviso that on silly dull days where there's hardly any light at all, well, why not just use the lights all day long? So that's why they're on at the moment. That's why it looks like the sun's out in here. It's not. Oh, just a quick one. Somebody asked about the Oncidium sotoanum, and having repotted it in full bloom, has it done any harm? Well, the telltale spike is this one, because this was just a spike of tiny little buds. And in the main, they are still swelling up and they are going to open. So that spike hasn't stalled. These were already in bloom, and this spike over here never looked very good in the first place, so that still looks the same. But the bulbs have stayed plump. I don't think it's suffered in any shape or form from having a repot whilst in full bloom. And say it didn't have the best root system, but it didn't have a bad root system. Right, let's get the bags undone then. Ugh. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this with one hand, but I will make an effort. And this is the one that I bought myself. Well, actually my daughter bought it for me. This was good actually, because it was one of the European traders who obviously trades in euros as opposed to the good old British pound. And when I went to visit Rachel in Ireland, obviously I got myself some euros to spend while I was there, and I had some left over. So I actually paid in euros. The guy was over the moon because he didn't have to do all the conversion and nonsense. That's one of the traders I was talking to who's, it's actually a Kearns. It's probably a good job he didn't actually know who I was, because we did have a falling out, quite a bad one, back in the day, long time ago now. So it's a little Oncidium. Let's get it in the light. We just well use them. They're on. It has a nice lot of spikes. It has signs of some new growth. I would say, looking at it, it's a relatively young plant, but it does look like a single plant, because they do cheat, some of these traders, and actually put 2 or 3 pieces of a plant in a pot together, because those pieces have all got a spike on, and it makes the plant look like a big mature plant with lots of spikes, when in fact it's little plants been broken off. Anyway, this came from a Kearns, a very good price, and I think this one in fact has a proper name. It's not just a twinkle and a colour, apart from the fact they've stapled the tag to the pot. What have we got then? Oncidium Siku Marguerite Cheyenne Sea Glory. So it's actually got a real proper hybrid name, a registered name. Well, I'm impressed. All the other twinkles I've got are Oncidium Twinkle colour, yellow. Anyway, it's a nice little plant. I'm pleased with it. It will grow on, but you can see, I mean, there's a little broken bud there, that's transport, but hopefully this will just push on. It'll adapt to my environment quite nicely. It looks like it's potted in something reasonable, so I don't need to rush off and repot that immediately. That's going to stay in its pot until such time as I see some new growths with some new roots, because what it's in looks good. So that's that little one. Let's put that up there, light up the world. And now the other two were presents, and this one on the surface looks quite good until you look at it a bit more thoroughly. Looks quite a nice plant, doesn't it? Look at that lovely big pseudo bulb. Look at that lovely big new growth. Right, now look at it closer. Can you see the gap? Yeah? So you've got a large piece and somebody stuck a small piece in the edge of the pot. That small piece has a rotting pseudo bulb attached to it. So that's got to come out of that pot. Now look at the roots at the base of the plant. They're failing quite badly. Yeah? Even that new growth looks to have already put out its new root system, many of which have failed. So this is now a struggling plant. It's got a tag on it, but I was told it was a Miltonia, and it was yellow. Right, it's actually Miltonia Sunset Glory. Don't worry about the price on there. The lady said this had been reduced down to a token amount, basically. So what was paid for the plant is negligible, but nonetheless it was a present, so it's appreciated. But that's got "take me into the kitchen as soon as possible" written all over it, which I will do. That's a must do. That's what I call a plant in desperate need of a repot. And the chances are the little piece on the side may actually get discarded. I'll see how I go. It depends how far that orangey pseudo bulb has got into the rhizome of that little bit. It might actually be fine. Just take off that little bulb and pop that little bit up separately. Anyway, the rest of the plant doesn't look bad. but it has got a failing root system which needs work now. So I will get onto that during the week. So let's get that one out of the way. And the other one that's in the little brown bag down here, I haven't really got a clue what this is. Let's see what we've got then. Let me get this out with one hand. Is this paper? Yeah, that's paper, so that should just tear off. I'm just trying to think which trader wraps stuff up in black paper. I can't think of one. So it must have come from a trader I've never bought from before. They all have their ways of wrapping things up when people buy at shows. And sometimes you can tell exactly where the plant came from. Excuse me, I'm just going to use my second hand. That camera's just gone all over the place. So what we've got is, it's actually got a tag, so we can find out exactly what we've got, but it does have a spike, whatever it is. It is, oh, it's a Masdevallia. Oh my god. It's decuman, and unfortunately it's crossed with Vechiana. And everything I've ever had with Vechiana in it has failed miserably, because that's not a cool growing Masdevallia, it's a cold growing Masdevallia. And it doesn't like any shape or form of heat. That doesn't need a repot. That media is pretty new, pretty good stuff, and it's a nice little plant. And it's got a lovely strong new growth coming up in the middle, so it's actively growing, and it does have a spike, so we'll be able to see what it looks like. If it's got Vechiana in it, it's going to be an orangey colour, I suspect. That's a nice clean little plant. It's incredibly dry. Boy, does that need a drink. And it's going to be one of those in that open basket in mainly bark. There's a bit of moss in there, but not a lot. That's going to take a bit of keeping moist, because it shouldn't dry out. So it's going to need watering very frequently because of what it's potted in. But I'm not going to disturb it yet. There's no reason to change the media in that, because it's good quality. It's not breaking down. And although Masdevallias can be repotted any time of year, it's still better to wait till there's a lot of active growth, and at the moment there's one new growth in the middle. So that can spend the winter in that environment, and I'll just have to keep up with the watering on it. But it's a nice little plant. Yes. Be interesting to see what the blooms are like. The Vechiana is a very large flowered, lovely bloom. Lovely orange. I think it's got the hairs on the actual blooms that sort of give it a purpley sheen from memory. So it could be a very interesting bloom. So we'll see how we can do with that. That will need to get some hanging apparatus so that I can hang it, although it could sit on the shelf. You know, actually I won't hang it, it'll only get in the way. Yeah, so we've got some new plants to look at and look after, and at least one of them will be a kitchen session in the near future. So I'll leave it at that for today, and I don't know what the next video will be. My daughter's down for the weekend. She won't be going back till Monday, so I've got some clips I can put together to get a video posted tomorrow, and then I'll be back to my normal sort of routine with the orchids on Tuesday. So we'll see how we go from there. But thanks for dropping by and listening to all my Brexit woes. But I don't know, until it happens one way or the other, everybody's guessing, quite honestly. You know, this could be one of these brinkmanship negotiations where everybody's holding back and not giving in until the last minute, when they actually get their heads together and realise the consequences of getting this wrong are too serious to contemplate. So my attitude is get them all in one room and bang their flipping heads together, followed by a statement like, "Will you get your act together? This is people's lives you're messing about with here." Anyway, on that sour note, because politicians really get on my nerves. I need a good kick up the jacksie. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.